All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to JBuck Studios, your home for reviews, reactions, and of course, ridiculousness. And we're continuing with, obviously, Mandalorian Season 2. We're talking about everything that happened in this latest episode, chapter 15, episode 7 of season 2. Yeah, I'm very excited. I literally just finished this up. Hopefully I got all of the kinks of this live stream working out and everything like that. Let me move that a little bit. There we go. But before we get into this episode, let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this episode. What stood out to you? What things did you like? What things did you not like? What things do you think are going to play into the next season or next episode? Everything like that. Let me check. Okay, there we go. Okay. I had to make sure that the audio was working correctly. But yeah, let me know in the chat and also the comments down below what you guys thought of this episode. Did you like it? Did you hate it? All of that stuff. But I'm going to get into kind of some spoiler-free thoughts up front. I thought that this was a fine episode. It wasn't anything crazy like the Ahsoka Tano episode or even last week's episode with Boba Fett literally wrecking shop. This is one that is definitely setting up things leading into the final episode of season 2, but also leading up into potential things that Disney announced today, other seasons and whatnot, but also seasons 3 and 4 essentially of where we're going to go with this and whatnot. Man, I keep saying and whatnot, so I apologize for that. But I thought that this was a fine episode, definitely in the middle of the pack for these episodes of season 2 so far. There was definitely some really cool scenes that we will be talking about, but that's kind of my spoiler-free thoughts of that. But getting into the spoilers of this episode, man, there was just so many cool things. Some things that when Boba Fett showed up last episode, I was hoping would be done, and they obviously did them, and we'll get into that in a little bit for sure. But I'm gonna kind of walk down what this episode really had in store, kind of opening up. Obviously, we are set up from the previous episode of going off with Cara Dune, Fennec, Boba Fett, and Mando to essentially spring or break Mayfield, aka Bill Burr's character, out of prison, because the first season he was put in that prison, or he was caught essentially. So he's off on some random prison planet, and it's kind of cool because he's like kind of taking apart or scrapping all of these Imperial TIE fighters and destroyers and AT-ATs and whatnot, and it's all of these remnants essentially of the Empire that they're still kind of piecing together, that I'm sure that they're going to combine back into more ships and everything like that. So that's really cool for sure. But obviously Cara Dune, she has some pull. She's kind of the new sheriff in town, so is able to spring Mayfield out of this prison camp essentially, and then use him, or recruit him rather, for her own mission. The mission that Boba, Fennec, all of them are going on. Essentially, it's setting up, or it feels very much like, I mentioned last episode, an Ocean's 11 type heist and whatnot, but this one is more like the Seven Samurai, the Magnificent Seven, something along those lines, where we have 5 people, again, not 7, but there's 5 people here that are definitely kicking some ass and whatnot. And the thing is, the way they structure this episode is really cool and interesting, because everyone plays their own piece in this plan essentially of this needs to work, this needs to work, this needs to work. And obviously, as we've seen throughout this season, throughout each episode, nothing goes to plan. So that's kind of what happened here is Mayfield and Mando are tasked with essentially breaking into this rundown kind of refinery mining facility from the Empire on Morak, some planet over there, and they are transporting in one of those juggernaut giant vehicles with the big tires and everything. They are transporting rhydinium, I believe. But Morak, I think that this was a cool planet. Again, I don't think we've really seen anything like this before in the Star Wars. Okay, hold on. We have seen something like Florana was one that's a very lush planet, but this one was really cool because I liked it felt kind of like it was inhabited a little bit. It had inhabitants there, but obviously the Empire came in, did their own thing. But also the lush green forest and atmosphere and whatnot, I really appreciated in this episode. And when they are traveling down that road in that juggernaut vehicle, it is this tempting thing. Clone turbo tank wannabe, yeah. It's one of those things that as they're driving down the path to this refinery or whatever, they essentially are seeing these other vehicles exploded on the side of the road, and they're like, oh, okay, this might be bad. This is going to be bad for us. And as the episode continues, we get an explosion up front, and then another one, and then you find out that essentially these inhabitants of this planet of Morak are pirates, and they're just destroying the Imperial freighters, essentially, and they are not getting away with this rhodium, which is, again, all of this is set up again like a video game. I think that is what is just intriguing me about everything in this show so far, because everything feels like a video game. This episode is literally escort an item to the target and make sure that it doesn't explode. It's speed in the Star Wars universe, where they can't go too fast, otherwise the bomb's going to explode. But if they're going too slow, the pirates are going to catch them with the thermal detonators and everything like that. So it was really cool to see them have to kind of strategically play into this of, we can't go too fast, but we also got to get away from these pirates that are trying to explode us, essentially. But the one thing that's kind of cool about this episode is that, hey, what's going on, people in the chat? We got Pinky, we have Lewis. What is going on? Sure. Yeah, Moff Gideon's ship is in the shape of a butt plug. Scoop, people, right there. Butt plugs. It's now canon in the Star Wars universe. But Mando has to strip down his armor, essentially. He doesn't get butt naked. I know some of you people probably want that. But he has to actually wear just kind of regular Imperial armor. And the way that he is still treating the Mandalorian lore and whatnot, or the religion, essentially, of not showing his face, ties into something later on in this episode. But the way that he has to kind of go off, he changes into this new outfit. But when he is fighting these pirates, it instantly is this thing where he's having to learn on the fly, because he's so used to his Beskar armor of blocking these shots from these pirates. And we've seen that in Season 1. We've seen that in all of the episodes of Season 2 so far. So it's really interesting to see him kind of out of his element. For sure, like because he tries to block with, I think, his armor and then his armband, essentially, but he's not wearing Beskar, so that piece of his armor just shatters off, and he has to kind of use his old kind of scrappy Mandalorian fighting skills to get over these pirates and whatnot. So that's kind of the setup of stealing this shipment, getting into the establishment, this kind of abandoned, rundown mining facility, to get data off of a computer in the place. So, I mean, it's pretty simple when you boil it down. Get into a place, get something, get out of the place. But there's a lot of factors that are really playing into it and whatnot. The one kind of tiny little thing that I didn't even know was possible in the Star Wars world was blasters running out of ammo. I thought that they were all energy based, and again, maybe I am miseducated right there, but I thought that they were or misinformed. Yeah, when Mando runs out of blaster bullets for that pistol and he has to go hand to hand with these dudes, it's definitely something that I hadn't seen before. But we get the TIE fighters flying in, kind of escorting them, which was kind of a cool kind of not establishment, but a cool shot of hopelessness, because the pirates are going to get them, but then the TIE fighters come in, wreck some shop right there, and then all of the stormtroopers are very much like congratulating them and everything like that. So it was really cool. A recharge clip. Okay, so I didn't know that there was a recharge clip. Pinky throwing in some facts in the chat. Hopefully you're right, Pinky. But once they get into the facility, Boba is kind of hanging out in Slave 1, waiting for other things to really happen. He's kind of the getaway driver. And then Fennec and Cara Dune are the lookouts, the snipers, essentially, up on the cliff. But once we're inside, Mando and Mayfield, they're in, they've done it. But they have to make it into essentially the mess hall, the cafeteria, if you will, to get this data off of the computer. And Mayfield is like, sure, I got this. I have my helmet off. None of these people probably even recognize me. Like, let's do this. However, when he walks right in there, he notices that there's an officer, an imperial officer that he is familiar with. And essentially it is, quote unquote, what's his name here? I wrote it down. Valen Hess, who apparently Mayfield, when he was in the Empire working as an Imperial stormtrooper or some sort of trooper, he was under Valen Hess. So he's like, dude, that guy is going to recognize me. I can't do this. We got to abort the mission, because the data tapes use facial recognition. So if I can't use my face, Mayfield is saying, how are we going to do this? But then Mando walks in there and says, I will do it himself. And I'm like, wait a minute, whoa, what's going on? How does the computer going to be able to scan Mando's face? And he goes up to the computer. Obviously, it's scanning his helmet. It is not working. Boom! We get his face. We get his Pedro Pascal is in this episode. He is actually under the helmet. He takes the helmet off, which was nice to see because I think, again, I'm trying to remember. I know in episode or season 1, he took his helmet off once, and this season he has yet to do that. But the one interesting thing kind of ties back to the conversation. So Mando took his helmet off, but there's a conversation earlier with Mayfield and Mando about kind of what are the rules of his essentially Mandalorian religion. Like, can he only wear his helmet? Can he not take it off? Can he not show this face or anything? So it's this interesting thing where maybe Mando is following these rules, these outdated rules of Mandalorians, or Mandalore, I guess, and maybe he will slowly start showing his face more and more. Personally, I want him to just leave the helmet on because it looks badass. But yeah, when he's at the computer facial recognizes him, and he gets the data. But the Mr. Officer, Valen Hess, is kind of goes up to him and he's like, hey man, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they're basically almost caught, but luckily Mayfield sweeps in and he kind of does some sweet talking, and they're home free. But this officer, this Valen Hess character, is like, well, you're the only troopers that really made it back, so let's have a drink. And the thing is, obviously people who are aware of Star Wars, like the Empire is all kind of, they're the Nazis and whatnot. And this scene where Valen Hess is sitting down with Mayfield and Mando, aka Pedro Pascal, is a scene that honestly feels like it's right out of Inglourious Bastards, where they're down in the basement. It's this officer, they're sitting there, they're kind of talking about things, and it's very much uneasy. You can tell that Mayfield, Bill Burr's character, is very much getting on his nerves. He's talking about things that very much bring up like PTSD in his past. And the one thing that kind of sets him off is when they start talking about, let's see here. Oh God, where is it? Mayfield, when they're talking about Burning Khan, I believe. Hold on, I gotta look this up. Burning Khan, which is apparently a planet from Legends. So now it's canonical, but basically it's like what the Legends is saying. It's kind of an old mining planet and everything like that. But Mayfield and Valen Hess, and I'm assuming a bunch of other troopers, went in there, wiped out a bunch of people, kind of terraformed the planet, I guess. But yeah, this Burning Khan thing definitely sets off Mayfield. But right before that, there's one cool thing that happens, is they also mention, hey, there hasn't been this much destruction or whatever since Project Cinder. And if people out there aren't aware of what Project Cinder is, if you went and played Battlefront 2, the video game, Project Cinder was kind of this plan that the Empire, or Emperor rather, had in play for just kind of a bunch of things to happen, like this whole new fiasco of setting up essentially what is the not the New Republic, but the First Order, essentially. But the mention of Project Cinder was really cool, which kind of gives me a hint. I'm like, are we going to get Iden Versio, played by, or the character, or the actress rather, Gina Gavankar, I believe. I think it'd be cool to get Iden Versio in here. I could see her popping up in the next episode or season 3 for sure, especially since Project Cinder is mentioned in this. So that could be one theory moving forward, that we get Iden Versio into the mix here for sure. Let me know in the chat if you guys think about that or not. I don't think Mando is going to get Grogu back in the next episode. Yeah, Austin, I'm kind of thinking the same thing. And also Jeremy, he did not get Grogu back. I don't think he's going to get him back. There's only one more episode of this season, but we will get into that in just a quick bit. But reeling it back, Mayfield, he's had enough. Boom! Pulls out his blaster and shoots Valen Hess, a.k.a. the officer, and then they just have to keep busting people up. They are just shooting all of these Imperial officers and stormtroopers and other troopers in this mess hall, but their plan, they basically get out. They jump out the window. Fennec and Cara Dune are up on the hill sniping. Boba is ready to go. He brings the ship in, picks them up on the roof, and they are good to go. But as we knew, or as we saw earlier, this base has TIE fighters. They are heavily armored from the inside out. They have cannons on the roof, and then there's 2 TIE fighters that are coming after them. But Slave One, this was the thing that I literally yelled at my TV because I was so excited. Slave One is going away. Mayfield and Mando are both on the ship. They are free. They're getting away. But there's those two TIE fighters after. Mando or Boba Fett hits a nice little button, and then what comes out? A goddamn seismic charge. There is a seismic charge. That was the one thing that I really wanted, was when Boba Fett was back, I was like, okay, we're getting him back. We have the ship. Are we going to get a seismic charge? Pops that sumbitch out the back, hits the guitar riff, and the 2 TIE fighters explode, and I was just so happy because it took me back to being 10 years old, watching Attack of the Clones once again. I was so excited for that, for sure. So who else was just absolutely hyped for a seismic charge? Because that sound effect is so amazing. Like, I can't even, amazing. So that kind of ends the episode a little bit. I mean, we get there, we find out that they now get the plans to find out where Moff Gideon's cruiser is. Mayfield is kind of let go by Cara Dune, but the thing is, Cara Dune does say one thing when Mayfield does a perfect sniper bullet and kind of explodes the mining facility. She does kind of take note. And I'm wondering if now that Mayfield has kind of potentially seen some good, he's a little bit good, he's kind of doing his own thing. I'm wondering if Cara Dune will kind of recruit him to help her with kind of the duties and whatnot. And I said duty, with the tasks at hand that she is doing. I thought for sure at the end she'd kind of hint towards it and be like, hey man, come hang out with me. I think you're a great shot. I think that you would be great for me. But he kind of is let to, go his own way. So I'm curious if that is going to play into anything in future seasons. Maybe he's going to be a reoccurring character where whenever Mando needs someone to help out, Mayfield could come back into the mix, but that definitely left the door open where I think Mayfield is going to be a character that is going to be popping up in multiple seasons of the Mando or potentially other spin-off Star Wars series for sure. But the very last thing, thank you so much, Pinky, for jumping this in there. He says he loves, Pinky, he or she, I guess, loves Mando's warning at the end. And the very last bit of this episode is Moff Gideon's cruiser, and Mando pops up on the comm and is basically like, hey man, I'm not taking shit from no one anymore. Moff Gideon, I know where you're at. I'm coming after the little green guy. I love the little green guy. You do not mess with him because I am coming for you. So that definitely is setting up the next episode. But the thing is, I don't know if they're going to get there in time to save Grogu, because what I think in my mind is going to have to happen is more than just one episode's worth. So let me know in the comments if you think Grogu, maybe Baby Yoda, is going to come back in the next episode. But yeah, Mando is just threatening Moff Gideon. It is awesome at the very end for sure. But man, this episode, some fun stuff, some wild stuff, some cool stuff, some nostalgic stuff. This is Mando is great. Awesome stuff. But the 14 of you watching, thank you so much. Let me know in the chat what you loved, what you didn't like. Hit that like button for sure. But kind of some theories or where I think episode 8 is going to go. I think that they might catch up to Moff Gideon's ship. I just don't think that they are going to get Grogu back. I think that he is going to be captured, but the thing is the introduction of those dark troopers, potentially, that Moff Gideon had been working on his ship, might come into the mix. So Mando shows up, they get on the cruiser, they're fighting their way there, they almost have Grogu, but then these dark troopers somehow come into the mix. I don't know. Maybe we might lose someone, maybe we might not. I really don't know there. But the one thing that I think, the biggest thing that really stood out to me, because again, I don't think in one episode we'll be able to clear up or save this character, essentially. The Operation Cinder, that message, that mention of that really has me intrigued. That are we going to see Iden Versio in this next episode? And she is going to be a main character, kind of Moff Gideon's right-hand woman moving forward. I don't exactly know timeline-wise from Battlefront 2 where this lines up in the canon, essentially, but if we got a live-action Iden Versio, that means any character from the video games will then be in Star Wars series or movies, which ties back into last week with Cal from Fallen Order. I still think he's going to pop up, maybe not in this season, but seasons 3 or 4, or the Ahsoka Tano series that was just announced today from Disney. But yeah, I think Project Cinder was perfectly placed. Iden Versio could potentially pop up. I don't know, man. I'm just so awesome. Let's see here. Would be nice if they gave us an episode 9. Yeah, that's the thing, is like we only have one more episode of season 2, and I think that is going to have to be a longer episode, like kind of like the Ahsoka Tano episode where that was 47 minutes. I could see this final episode being 45, 47, hell, even maybe 50-ish minutes to really wrap up everything, make it a nice cinematic finish, but also lay those threads into where this is going to go for sure. Yeah, Calvin, thank you so much for jumping in here. I don't know if you were in here when I mentioned it, but the use of the seismic charge was probably my favorite part of this episode, because I am a big fan of that weapon that Mando uses. Or not Mando, but Boba and Jango used in the video games, and also the original or prequel trilogy. And when that happened, when those doors of the back of Slave One popped open and that seismic charge came out, I was so happy. I was giddy like a little kid and everything like that. But everyone, that is kind of my thoughts and theories and breakdown of this episode. Thank you all 20 of you watching. Be sure to like this video. And again, before we wrap this up, let me know in the comments what you really thought of this episode. Did you think that it was a upper half of this season so far, lower half? What really jumped out at you? I mean, again, my highlight for sure is that gosh darn seismic charge. That was the coolest thing for sure. But anyways, before we wrap this up, because I know that the stream is a little behind for the chat, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the JBuck Studios channel. Again, in the comments, if you're watching this on the replay, let me know what your thoughts are of this episode, but also some potential theories moving forward. I love Star Wars. I love talking about this every single week. Obviously, I'm staying up. I drink a bunch of coffee, and I am just so happy to be able to talk to Star Wars, to the internets, and to all of you, and everything like that. Love the Slave One interior when it shifts. Heck yeah, man, for sure. And yeah, that was really cool. Absolutely. But yeah, that's kind of it. Morak, the new planet that they kind of went to, a mention of burning Khan, which is another planet that is now canon, and then also Project Cinder, even though the story in Battlefront is said to be canon for sure. But thank you everyone for watching, everyone for hanging out. Hopefully you loved this episode, and be sure to tune in next week when we wrap up episode 8 or Chapter 16, and we're going to give a bit, it's going to be probably a longer episode of all of our theories, where this is going to go, and potentially if Boba is going to just be hanging out with him through Season 3, because who knows, if they don't get Grogu back, Boba is still tied, him and Fennec are still tied to Mando. Anyways, though, thank you everyone for watching. This is great. This is awesome. Like this video, subscribe to JBuck Studios channel, and we'll be back next week at this time with Mando coverage as always. Bye-bye.